All right, I think we'll just get started, and others can come in medias res as they check in. Let's say a prayer. O Heavenly King, O Comforter, Spirit of Truth, whatever are present and fill us all things, the treasure of good things and giver of life, come and abide in us and cleanse us from impurity and save our souls a good one. O Lord Jesus Christ, only begotten Son of thy eternal Father, thou said thy most for lips that me do nothing. O our Lord and our God, in faith we embrace thy words, our heart and soul, and bow before thy goodness. Help us sinners, doing you through the work we're about to begin of sacred study, to the glory of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, living and reigning to the ages of ages. All right, so tonight we're going to proceed to the fourth day of creation, the day in which God created the heavenly bodies. So good evening, Isaac and Ambrose. Is Ambrose with you tonight?
Yes, Father. Yes.
There he is. Good evening, Ambrose.
Good evening,
You're a
Father.
junior student, Ambrose. You're a youngest student. Well, no, May is the youngest. That's right. Because Ambrose, you're already 12, aren't you?
Yeah,
Well, May just became 12 last week, so May is the youngest student. Right. So we're going to go on now to Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 19, the fourth day of creation. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to separate," and here the Septuagint includes the phrase "for illumination." So the Septuagint says, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven for illumination, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Let them be lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good. There was evening, there was morning, a fourth day. The author goes on. The fourth day of creation is a source of great embarrassment for those who would like to fit the 6 days into an evolutionary framework. There's absolutely no way this can be done if the sun was actually created on the fourth day. So Father Seraphim is often addressing those who would like to combine evolution or the evolutionary framework with the Bible, where it's Christians who want to somehow, squeeze it all, somehow put the square peg in the round hole and make it all work together. And you really can't do that because in the evolutionary framework, of course, the sun was first, or the sun evolved first, right, and the earth was after that. And of course, in the materialistic worldview, without the sun, there's no light. They think of the sun as the source of light rather than the sun as a source of light, or the source of light God decided after he created light. For this reason, such apologists for the evolutionary interpretation have to believe that the sun was really created on the first day with the heavens, but only appeared on the fourth day. That's how they do it. That's one of the little tricks they use. It appeared on the fourth day. Apparently, after the cloud covering the earth during the first 3 days had lifted. This is the explanation given by the old earth slash progressive creationists as well as by Christian evolutionists. So we should remind ourselves once more that the first chapters of Genesis are not an account of the natural development of the earth, according to the laws of government. Of course, saying the same. Of course, we're recurring to this same principle, or rather, the same insight. Remind ourselves once more that the first chapters of Genesis are not an account of the natural development of the earth, according to the laws now governing this development, but an account of the miraculous beginning of all things. We are not free to rearrange the days of Genesis to fit our theories. We must rather humble our understanding so as to comprehend what the sacred text actually says. Here, as always, the Holy Fathers are our key to this comprehension. How do they understand the fourth day? The Holy Fathers are unanimous in affirming that the sun and the heavenly luminaries were created on the fourth day. They did not merely appear on the fourth day. There is no reason why, if the text of Genesis permitted it, the Fathers could not have accepted the seemingly more natural explanation that the light of the sun illuminated the first 3 days, but that the orb of the sun only became visible from the earth on the fourth day. That they universally reject this explanation can only mean that the text of Genesis does not allow it. If the Fathers are unanimous about something, then you simply have to reject the Fathers in order to have this other understanding. St. John Chrysostom writes, "He which created the sun on the fourth day so that you might not think that it produces the day. So St. John Chrysostom is making the point, he did it on purpose, so you wouldn't think the sun was the source of light, that only God was the source of light. St. Basil teaches the heavens and the earth had come first, after them light had been created, day and night separated, and in turn the firmament and the dry land revealed, which we've already been through the first 3 days of creation. Water had been collected into a fixed and definite gathering. The earth had been filled with its proper fruits. Remember that on the third day all the vegetation had already sprouted up. It had brought forth countless kinds of herbs and had been adorned with various species of plants. However, the sun did not yet exist, nor the moon, lest men might call the sun the first cause and the father of light, and lest they who are ignorant of God might deem it the producer of what grows from the earth. If the creation of light had preceded, why now is the sun in turn said to have been made to give light? So God did it on purpose, so people would know not to worship the sun. The sun's not the origin of light. The sun's simply a vessel or a mechanism for producing light that God created after light had been created. At the time, that is the first day, the actual nature of light was introduced, but now the solar body has been made ready to be a vehicle for that first created light. There's a footnote, an interesting footnote here. St. John of Damascus also states that the sun and the other luminaries created on the fourth day were made to serve as receptacles of the light created on the first day. Blessed Theodoret of Cyrus sets forth the same teaching in order to explain the order of God's creative acts. To the question, why did God create the plants before and the animals after the heavenly lights? Blessed Theodoret replies, animals have eyes and could not have tolerated the excessively bright light. That's an interesting thought. We don't have to accept that as a dogmatic teaching, but it's interesting that a recognized father has this opinion, right? When the light was apportioned among the lesser and greater lights, it emitted a brightness commensurate with the vision of the animals. Plants, in contrast, have no senses, so they don't see or hear, right? So the plants just basked in that brilliant light, that amazing light and heat of the first 3 days, and then the sun and moon were created, and the sun gives a more moderate amount of light than existed in the first 3 days. That's a beautiful thought, and it may very well be the case. Do not tell me, and here we're going to go on St. Basil. Do not tell me it's impossible for these to be separated, that is, the sun and the light. I certainly do not say the separation of light from the solar body is possible for you and me, which, in our experience, we don't have light apart from the sun. Let me turn this gadget off. Going to keep pestering us. I'll let them. Okay. Let's turn it. There we go. Do not tell me it's impossible for those to be separated. I certainly do not say the separation of light from the solar body is possible for you and me, but that which we are able to separate in thought can also be separated in actuality by the creator of its nature. Let them serve, he says, for the fixing of days, not for making days, but for ruling the days. For day and night are earlier than the generation of the luminaries. Right? Day and night. From the first day there was day and night. Right? So they're not the they fix the days. They don't make the days. They're a calendar. What did the author Moses say? God says, "Let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years, and let the lights in the firmament of the heavens give light upon the earth." So they're a calendar. God created all this vast, majestic array of the heavens to be a calendar for man. St. Ambrose makes a special emphasis on this point. Look first upon the firmament of heaven which was made before the sun. Look first upon the earth, which began to be visible and was already formed before the sun put in its appearance. Look at the plants of the earth, which proceeded in time the light of the sun. The bramble preceded the sun. The blade of grass is older than the moon. Therefore, do not believe that object to be a god, to which the gifts of God are seen to be preferred. 3 days have passed. No one, meanwhile, has looked for the sun, yet the brilliance of light has been in evidence everywhere. The day, too, has its light, which is itself the precursor of the sun. The precursor of the sun. So, of course, the fathers were battling the ancient paganism, in which worship of the sun was a prominent feature in certain religions. Um, at the time, in late antiquity, there was a resurgence of sun worship in the form of uh, the cult of Mithras, which had a feast they called the Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. I believe it happened at the winter solstice, and so sun worship was very common. You would imagine, pagans living in the darkness of ignorance would naturally look at the sun, and without the sun, that we wouldn't have light, we wouldn't have crops, we wouldn't have life, we wouldn't have anything. The sun must be the author of life, right? So it's an understandable thing that people without the light of God's knowledge would come to this idea. And don't think there aren't still sun worshippers. There are still sun worshippers. And I don't mean just the people who go sunbathing on the beaches. So that's a crude form of sun worship, you might say. But we remember years ago, in the summer of 2000, we went to the Holy Land in Mount Sinai. And when you go to Mount Sinai, to climb to the summit of Mount Sinai, you have to leave at 1 a.m. and get up there about sunrise, and then come back down before it gets too hot, because it's just so hot. And there were some of us there who were Orthodox pilgrims. There was a huge crowd of people who were obviously not pilgrims, just secular people. And the monks told us they were sun worshippers. They were secular people, just modern secular people who actually were literally sun worshippers. So there's all kind of a recrudescence of various kinds of paganism today, and I guess sun worship's one of them. These people, of course, they're obviously people who have money to burn, right? They're just wealthy, probably dinks, double income, no kid types, or just wealthy single types or whatever, who had money to roam around the world to special places where they would worship the sun. So Mount Sinai was one of them for some reason, and they'd go there to watch the sunrise at Mount Sinai. So it still exists. Father Seraphim goes on. The idea that life on earth from the beginning was dependent on the sun, that even the earth itself comes from the sun, is a recent idea that is nothing but the sheerest guess. It's not science. When they say trust the science, well, this isn't science, right? You're saying probably many of us when we were in school, right, we saw these drawings showing the planets, right, separating out of the sun, and then the Earth separating from the glob, and then the moon separating from the Earth glob, and so forth. It's all a fantasy, right? So nobody can prove that. It's purely a construct of their minds. It even has no direct connection with the truth or falsity of the so-called evolution of life on Earth. Because men in recent centuries have been looking for a new and natural explanation of the world's origin, having rejected the explanation that comes from divine revelation, it seemed a matter of course that the sun, so much larger, astronomically more significant than the Earth, in the center of the Earth's orbit, so-called, supposedly, should precede the Earth rather than the other way around. But divine revelation interpreted by the Holy Fathers tells us the contrary. This Earth comes first in time and significance, and the sun comes second. The sun is there to serve the Earth, as Earth serves man. If our minds were not so chained to the intellectual fashions of the times, if we were not so afraid of being thought behind the times, we would not have such difficulty in opening our minds to the alternative explanation of the world's beginnings. In the scriptural patristic view, the Earth, the home of man, the pinnacle of God's creation, is the center of the universe. The Earth is the center of the universe. And the idea that the Earth is just in some random place with a bunch of other bodies spinning around in random, kind of in this random way, is a invention of the 20th century. And they had to get Einstein to invent relativity to defend it, to even still maintain it. You see. And as I believe I quoted Einstein earlier, Einstein said, yes, we could have a cosmology in which there's a perfectly valid mathematical construct that accords with the astronomical evidence to put the Earth at the center of the universe, and the Earth not moving at the center of the universe. But we don't want to do that, because that would mean Christianity, and that wouldn't be science, because it would be, we have to believe in God, because they define science as a thought system that excludes the Christian God. They've predefined science in that way. You see. By the way, speaking of Einstein and so forth, a correspondent of mine who was researching this whole question found that it wasn't just the meanie Pope and the Roman Catholics who condemned Galileo. There are opinions and decisions by Orthodox fathers condemning Copernican astronomy. I never knew that. He found this. It's all in Greek. See, nobody ever translated this into English. And this friend of mine found it, and he translated it. In 1797, Sergios Makreos, who proposed in 1819, a director of the Patriarchal School of Constantinople, with the support of the Patriarch Anthemius of Jerusalem, published a book entitled Trophy of the Panoply of the Hellenes against the Partisans of Copernicus. The Trophy of the Panoply. The tropeon means a symbol of victory. The panoply, the war, the display of warlike symbols, right? Of the Hellades of the Greeks, that is the Orthodox Greeks, against the partisans of Copernicus. St. Athanasios Parios, very important figure. We should really do a whole series sometime on the Kolivades fathers. Not only is their significance as the publishers of the Philokalia and teachers of the spiritual life and the ascetical life, frequency of Holy Communion, frequent confession, the Jesus prayer, all this revived, so to speak, by the Kolivades fathers in the Greek-speaking world, as the followers of Paisi Velishkovsky revived it in the Slavic and Romanian worlds. But also, certain of the Kolivades were intellectual opponents of the Enlightenment. And there's a press, New Rome Press is putting out a beautiful series of the writings of the Kolivades fathers, and I have a copy. I should have brought it tonight. A beautifully bound copy of St. Athanasios of Paros against the French Revolution, against the Enlightenment. It's great. It's really great. And so, anyways, and St. Athanasios of Paros he was not only an ascetic, illumined by God. He was a bona fide intellectual of the time. Right, he was widely. These are not people who had never read Copernicus or never read Galileo or never read. I mean, these are people. Remember that. I'm sorry, I'm going off on an excursus, but often we learn through these little side trips, right? We have to remember that the intellectual tradition of the East Roman Empire was continued, albeit in a smaller stream, you might say, or a thinner line of tradition, but the intellectual life of the Byzantine Empire did not just cease altogether. Even though many Greeks fled to the West and became Westernized, or became being engulfed in the Italian Renaissance, or even part of the instigators of the Renaissance, there were Orthodox fathers and in the monasteries and so forth who continued this. And these men were familiar with the ancient writers. They knew the ancient philosophers. They knew the science, ancient and modern. And they wrote against Copernicus. St. Athanasios Parios, the hieromonk Dorotheos Volismos, led the campaign which resulted in the condemnation of the Athanite monk Veniamin Lesvios in 1803 by a patriarchal synod for teaching the Copernican worldview. So we have this, an 1803 condemnation of a monk who was teaching Copernican astronomy. Okay. In 1819, a patriarchal synod in Constantinople also condemned heliocentrism, that the sun's at the center of the solar system, of the solar system, right? And the ecumenical patriarch had condemned the Copernican hypothesis again in 1839. Okay, so actually, it wasn't just. You see, you have leftist Orthodox who say, "Look at the stupid Roman Catholics; they were so obscurantist and they were so anti-science, and the Pope unjustly condemned good old Galileo, who was a secular saint who died for the truth and persecuted and all this." But actually, here's an Orthodox which the Orthodox got around to it later because they didn't care about this stuff till later, which they went right on believing in geocentrism up to this point. And then when the Copernican thing started being taught at this point in history, then the church had to condemn it. Okay. So And these were not only holy men; these are highly intelligent and learned men. That's another. And I asked my correspondent to find the sources for me, but I got to get him digging. I got to get him. I got to get back to him on this, finding out this, because he translated all this from the Greek. Nobody in the English-speaking world ever knew about this. It's all in Greek. So let's go on. In the scriptural patristic view, the earth as the home of man, man is the pinnacle of God's creation, is the center of the universe. Everything else, no matter what the scientific explanation of its present state and movement, and its physical immensity of it in comparison to the earth, everything is secondary, is made for the sake of the earth, that is, for man. Our God is of such power and majesty that we need not doubt in a single momentary exercise of his creative might. He brought into being this whole earth, large to us, but only a speck in the whole universe, that in another moment of his power, he made the whole immensity of the stars of heaven. He could do more than that if he willed. In the inspired text of Genesis, he has left us the barest outline of what he did do. Genesis is just a beautifully, poetically expressed account of what he did. Like I said, the outline. And this account is not required to record. This account is from God, so it's not required to account according to our human speculations and guesses. In our days, it has become fashionable and easy to believe that everything evolved by universally, absolutely uniform laws, which we can now observe from a primordial blob of energy or matter. Okay, so the idea of uniform laws actually precedes evolutionism, right? The idea of uniform laws goes back to the Newtonian era, right before Lyell and Darwin and all that. So there was the idea of the laws, but they were deists. They said God did create it, but then he put in these laws, and the universe was like a big machine operating on its own energy, like a flywheel, and like a clock, just its own laws. And then God went to sleep somewhere. God went off. He was a deus absconditus. He just absconded. He just went off. Okay, so they had this. So they implanted in people's minds the idea that they're just these fixed, immutable laws. That and God doesn't interfere with that. God's not involved anymore. He just made it. That's deism, which is the theology, so to speak, probably of most of the founding fathers of the United States. John Adams, for example, was definitely a deist. He kept going to church. John Adams liked to go to church. He went to church, I think, 3 times a day. When he was in Philadelphia, he enjoyed going to Catholic Mass. He's a churchy guy. He liked going to church, and he believed some kind of church was necessary. And he believed some form of Christianity specifically, of course, was necessary for the United States, for the Americans to be virtuous and be good Republicans and so forth. But he was definitely a deist, where it's God created it all, and then there are no miracles, there's no mystery. It's all according to these laws. But then the next stage is when the evolutionists come in and say, yes, there are these laws, and we don't need God. We had the Big Bang, or we had panspermia or whatever, and then that acted according to these laws, right? But the more the more they get into it, the more they have to make all these exceptions and create all these fantastic speculative constructs like dark matter and dark energy, which they say, as Michael was telling us last week, is 95% of the universe is dark matter or dark energy. So most of according to these people, most of material reality is unprovable and unfalsifiable. And they call that science, right? Okay, let's go on. From a primordial blob of energy or matter, if one needs God to explain anything, it's only to be the creator of the blob or the initiator of the Big Bang that supposedly has produced everything there is. Today it requires a broader mind, less change of public opinion, to see the enormity of the creative acts of God as described in Genesis. The Holy Fathers, the most sophisticated scientific minds of their time, can be the unchainers of our fettered minds. They're liberating us from all these delusions. But surely it might be asked, the creations of God must make sense from the natural point of view also. Why did God create such an enormous body as the sun to serve a small body as the earth? Couldn't he have conserved this energy and made a sun more in accordance with the scale of the earth. I don't know. One could, of course, conceive of a sun much smaller than the one we know, much closer to the earth, while preserving its apparent size seen from the earth. Of course, the flat earth people say the sun is smaller and it is closer. But I don't want to get into that because I don't want to, that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But such a sun would expand its energy many times more rapidly than the present sun does. Evidently, God made the sun the size and distance from the earth it needs to be to give the earth the amount of light and heat it requires to support life to the end of the age when the sun should be darkened. Of course, we know that it's not really in dispute that if we were just a tiny bit closer to the sun, we'd all burn up. If we were a little bit away, we'd freeze to death. Because God put it exactly where it needs to be. Exactly where it needs to be. We may also see another more mystical reason for the fact that the light precedes the sun in the days of creation. Here, admittedly, we have no fathers to quote, and we offer this interpretation as our opinion. Okay, so here is a Father Seraphim opinion. We will see below that the separation of man to male and female was not part of the original image in which God created him. The sexual function was made in prevision of the fall to allow for the biological reproduction. We know that it will not be a part of man's nature in the eternal kingdom of heaven, for the Lord says in the resurrection they will neither marry nor be given to marriage, whereas the angels of God in heaven. Rather, God made the division to male and female, foreseeing the fall of man and the increase of mankind would require a passionate mode of generation. Might it not be then, and we'll get to that when we talk about the creation of man and woman, might it not be then that the sun and moon are not part of God's original image of his creation, or only created to mark the days and months and years of man's fallen estate? And this is purely Father Seraphim's speculation here. The original light created in the first day had no need of a body to contain it. At the end of the world, till the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. In the kingdom of heaven, as on the first day of creation, there will be once more light without the sun or moon. For the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it. Yes, in the kingdom of heaven, in the new heaven and new earth, there will be no sun or moon, because God will be the light. He'll give the light. These are mysteries of which we can do no more than guess. All right, so you can take that or leave that, whatever, the last part, because those are just his speculations. Okay. But Father Seraphim always makes it clear when he's just offering a theory, and that when he's not quoting the Holy Fathers. The fifth day, and God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens." So God created the great sea monsters, every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let birds multiply in the earth." And there was evening, there was morning, the fifth day. In his commentary on the fifth day of creation, St. John Chrysostom emphasizes the preciseness and the accurateness, the precision and the accuracy of the order in which the creation is described. Here he says, "The blessed Moses, instructed by the Spirit of God, teaches us with such detail that we might clearly know both the order and the way of the creation of each thing. If God had not been concerned for our salvation and had not guided the tongue of the prophet, it would have been sufficient to say that God created the heaven and the earth and the sea and living creatures, but indicating either the order of the days or what was created earlier or what was later. But he distinguishes so clearly both the order of creation and the number of the days, and instructs us about everything with great condescension in order that we come to know the whole truth, but no longer heed the false teachings of those who speak of everything according to their own reasonings, and might comprehend the unutterable power of our Creator." But see, God gave just enough detail to refute certain false teachings, like worshiping the sun, for example. Thus, on the fifth day, Moses writes, he writes, I guess this is St. John Chrysostom, not Moses. On the fifth day, St. John Chrysostom says, "Just as of the earth, he said only, 'Let it bring forth,' and there appeared a great variety of flowers, herbs, and seeds, and everything occurred by his word alone. So also here he said, 'Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, Let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens. Suddenly there appeared so many kinds of crawling things, such a variety of birds, that it is impossible even to enumerate them with words. So on the fifth day, the sea creatures and the birds. And there's this wonderful, in the book, there's these wonderful mosaics and icons. I don't know how many people have a copy of the book. It's just wonderful. These wonderful mosaics. Here, May comes look at the birds. Look at this, a peacock and a... Isn't that something? The birdies. Yeah. The variety of birds, and here are the sea creatures they're poking their noses out of the water to look at their creator. It's great. Okay. St. Basil writes, all water was in eager haste to fulfill the command of its creator, and the great and ineffable power of God immediately produced an efficacious and active life in creatures of which one would not even be able to enumerate the kinds as soon as the capacity for propagating living creatures came to the waters through his command. St. Ambrose, at this command the waters immediately poured forth their offspring. The rivers were in labor, the lakes produced their quota of life, the sea itself began to bear all manners of reptiles. We are unable to record the multiplicity of the names of all those species which by divine command were brought to life in a moment of time. At the same instant, substantial form and the principle of life were brought into existence. The whale, as well as the frog, came into existence at the same time by the same creative power. So he's saying that these are the sea creatures. They're not divided. In other words, we think of whales as mammals and frogs as amphibians and fish and so forth. These are just sea creatures. So the sea creatures. Here, as in the creation of all living things, God creates the first of each kind. St. Basil writes, God orders the firstlings of each kind to be brought forth, seeds, as it were, from nature. And their numbers are controlled by successive progeny whenever they must increase and become numerous. Here, therefore, let us examine the meaning of the expression repeated in each of the 3 days in which life is created, each according to its kind. And there's a note by the editor. In the Septuagint, the Greek word for kind is genos, G-E-N-O-S, genos, from where we get the word genus, yes. And the Hebrew word is amin. Okay. Here, therefore, let's examine the meaning of this expression according to its kind. There can be no doubt whatever that the Holy Fathers understood clearly and unanimously that on these 3 days God created all the kinds of creatures we know today. All the kinds were created. They didn't evolve into other kinds. All the kinds were there. This can be seen in their often repeated assertions that God creates immediately and instantly, that it is his word alone that brings the creatures into being. It is not a natural property of the waters or earth to bring forth life. God gave them this power. Okay. On the latter point, St. Basil writes, speaking of the 6th day, we're looking at another 6th day, but to illustrate this point. When he said, let it bring forth, the earth did not produce what was stored up in it, but he who gave the command also bestowed upon it the power to bring forth. Because it didn't just evolve from the earth. God had to give it the power to bring forth. Neither did the earth, when it heard, let it bring forth vegetation and the fruit trees, produce plants which it had hidden in it. Whereas God wasn't helping evolution to happen. God was, at that moment, giving it the power to produce this thing immediately. Nor did it send it to the surface the palm or the oak of cypress, which have been hidden somewhere down below in its womb. On the contrary, it is the divine word that is the origin of all things made. Let the earth bring forth, not let it put forth what it already has, but let it acquire what it does not have, since God isn't doing it with the power of active force. At each step, each of the days, God is making it happen. He's not just teasing the evolutionary process over billions of years, or millions of years, whatever they say. Okay. The Holy Fathers have a very definite teaching on the kinds of creation. Let us bear in mind that we need not define precisely the limits of these kinds. The species of modern taxonomy are sometimes arbitrary and do not necessarily correspond to the kinds in Genesis. Okay, now, the editor has a long footnote. The definition of species has been the subject of much debate in modern science. In the first half of the 20th century, a species was generally defined as a group of plants or animals that are able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. That's the classic definition, right? In 1940 and again 1942, evolutionary biologist Ernst Mayr proposed a definition that was much less limiting. A species is a group that is reproductively isolated from other such groups. Does not generally mate with another group, though it may be capable of doing so. This new definition of species is today accepted by many biologists. Because it is so loose, it makes it easier to show that one species can evolve into another. Thus, for example, the polar bear and grizzly bear are classified in modern taxonomy as separate species, but they are capable of mating with each other and producing fertile offspring. In view of the patristic teaching on the kinds described in Genesis, however, it is evident these two species of bear are but different varieties of the same kind. They're just all bears. They're bears. Actually, what we know, all the evidence we have, and all of the power of natural selection is actually an argument for the creation of basic kinds, and then natural selection making the kinds into all these different varieties of the kinds. Okay, so it's funny that the evolutionists go to natural selection as proving evolution, but all natural selection proves is microevolution, right? Variation within a kind. So the amazing power of natural selection actually shows how the basic kinds that were all created in the first 6 days of creation could develop into the different, more variegated species that we know today. Michael, you have something to say? No? No.
Kids in the background. Kids in white asking questions.
The Holy Fathers have a very different teaching on the kinds of creation. The species of modern taxonomy are somewhat arbitrary. They do not necessarily correspond to the kinds of Genesis, but in general, one might say that the Fathers understand is included in a kind those creatures capable of producing a fertile offspring, as well as will be seen in what follows. St. Basil teaches that the kinds of Genesis, except of course for those that maybe have become extinct, maintain their nature to the end of time. And there's another interesting footnote here about extinction, the editor. The physical extinction of many of the original kinds mentioned in Genesis is one of the results of the bondage of corruption that began at the fall of man. Extinction is because of sin. In a sense, however, the extinction of these kinds is not absolute. Viewing this question theologically, the Orthodox priest Father Timothy Alfyorov, who, by the way, Father Timothy Alfyorov was a furious anti-Moscow Patriarchate person. The editors don't mention that, but he was Father Timothy and his brother Bishop Dionysi are, I don't even know what synod they're with now, but they're just like hardcore anti Moscow Patriarchate people. But the Alfyorov brothers wrote extensively against evolution, but it's all in Russian. Father Timothy Alfyorov writes, in the present condition, we see both individual death and the dying out of species. Information on the majority of living creatures has already been lost, is disincarnate. It has lost its material bearers, it's returned to its source in a pre-creation condition. These creatures exist only in their ideas, which were in God pre-eternally before time. For us, there remains only a partial knowledge of certain traits of these creatures, excavated bones and imprints. Okay, so well, first of all, many were destroyed in the flood, right? Because of man's sin. And then since then, others have died out. Okay, so remember, originally evolution says originally there's just primitive simplicity, and everything develops into greater and greater variation and greater elaboration. But nothing in man's experience verifies this. It's a complete fantasy, because man's whole experience is that as time goes on, there's less and less organization, and there's less and less genetic information, and there's more extinction of species. Okay. Things are winding down. They're not developing up. See. So St. Basil says all the kinds maintain their nature to the end of time. They don't evolve. St. Basil says there's nothing truer than this, that each plant either has seed or there exists in it some generative power. This accounts for the expression of its own kind. The shoot of the reed is not productive of an olive tree, right? Amoebae don't become Bach. The shoot of the reed is not productive of an olive tree. But from the reed comes another reed, from the seed spring plants related to the seed sown. No one's ever observed anything else. in all of history. Right? Thus, what was put forth by the earth in its first generation has been preserved until the present time, since the kinds persisted through constant reproduction of their own kind. Okay. And further, the nature of existing objects set in motion by one command passes through creation without change, by generation and destruction, preserving the succession of the kinds through resemblance until it reaches the very end. It begets a horse, successor of a horse, a lion of a lion, an eagle of an eagle, and it continues to observe each of the animals by uninterrupted successions till the consummation of the universe. No length of time causes the specific characteristics of the animals to be corrupted or effaced. As if established just recently, nature, ever fresh, moves along with time. The footnote says, here St. Basil is not claiming that there's no kind of creature that doesn't become extinct. He's simply saying that the kinds, as long as they exist, they maintain their characteristics. They don't become something else. St. Ambrose teaches, in the pine cone, nature seems to express an image of itself. It preserves its peculiar properties, which it received from that divine and celestial command, and it repeats in the succession order of the years, its generation till the end of time. The end of time is fulfilled. The same Father says even more decisively, the Word of God permeates every creature in the constitution of the world. Hence, as God had ordained, all kinds of living creatures were quickly produced from the earth. In compliance with a fixed law, they all succeed each other from age to age, according to their aspect and kind. The lion generates a lion, the tiger a tiger, the ox an ox, the swan a swan, the eagle the eagle. What was once enjoined became in nature a habit for all time. Hence, the earth has not ceased to offer the homage of her service. The original species of living creatures is reproduced for future ages by successive generations of its kind. Okay. See what time is? Only 8:43. Another footnote. St. Athanasius the Great likewise writes on how each kind of creature preserves its own essence, specifically on how irrational creatures cannot be transformed into rational man. Irrational creatures cannot be transformed. And remember, all the Holy Fathers knew about evolutionary theories. Not exactly the same as Darwinian theory, but there were philosophers and scientists of ancient classical antiquity who believed in evolution, right? There's nothing new under the sun. There are no errors that are really new. All the errors are new variations of the old errors. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. He's quoting Romans. St. Athanasius quoting Romans. St. Athanasius goes on. Neither the light is as the night, nor the sun is the moon, nor the irrational as rational man, nor the angels as the thrones, nor the thrones as the authorities, yet they are all creatures. But even within the angelic ranks, each is itself. But each of the things that are made according to its kind exists and remains in its own essence as it was made. This is a long footnote. The modern Holy Father, St. John of Kronstadt, echoes the same patristic teaching with regard to animals and man. He says, the Creator in the beginning made only the beginnings of fish and birds, their kinds, and left their propagation to themselves under his protection, just as the propagation of the human race. Even now, till now, all kinds of fish and birds, having propagated themselves infinitely, exactly preserve the appearance, temperance, and habits of their own kinds, not mixing themselves in slights with the other ones. Every kind of fish and bird, every kind of reptile, remain also the same even now, such as they were several thousand years ago, with the same characteristics which they received from the Creator in the beginning. It will be noted that St. John of Kronstadt here contradicts not only the theory of evolution, but also the millions of years, despite the fact that both ideas had gained wide acceptance in his time. Elsewhere, St. John explicitly rejected evolutionary theory. St. John of Kronstadt was a completely traditional thinker, right? So this is why the liberals in the Russian church, for decades, the liberals did not want the church to canonize St. John of Kronstadt. It's only after the Russian Church abroad canonized in 1964, and then the liberals kind of had to, they jumped on board. St. John of Kronstadt became popular, so they had to jump on board. But when they publish writings of St. John of Kronstadt, they always admit things he says about monarchy or nationalism or evolution, or they don't like anything where he challenges the modern worldview. They don't like it. They only like the things that sound pious and are only specifically religious, but the things that are touch on science or society or politics. They don't want people to know what St. John of Kronstadt thought, because it would contradict their worldview. Okay. The attempts of breeders of both animals and plants in all ages to make a new species, it only proves that the patristic maxim of the constancy of species, these hybrids are sterile, they cannot reproduce themselves. St. Ambrose uses this example, and this is true also of mutations that occur in nature. Mutations are sterile. Okay? So for a long time, and still in orthodox Darwinism and classical Darwinism, the mechanism for evolution is a mutation. But there are no observable examples where mutations create a new species that can reproduce itself. St. Ambrose uses this example to warn men against unnatural unions, which go against the laws which God established in the days of creation. St. Ambrose writes, "But what pure and untarnished generations follow without intermingling one after another? The Thimalus, I don't know what a Thimalus was. It's a sea creature. It proves a Thimalus. A sea wolf, I don't know what a sea wolf is. The sea scorpion, too, preserves unstained its marriage bed. Fish know nothing of union with alien species. They do not have unnatural betrothals, such as are designedly brought about between animals of two different species, the donkey and the mare. Again, the female donkey and the horse, both being examples of unnatural. Oh, he's against mules. He doesn't like that. And of course, when a mule, of course, is sterile, right? Mules, you can't mate mules, right? Certainly, there are cases in which nature suffers more in the nature of defilement rather than that of injury to the individual. Man as an embedder of hybrid barrenness is responsible for this. So Saint Ambrose is going against messing with Mother Nature. Right? He considers a mongrel animal more valuable than one of a genuine species. You mix together alien species, you might mingle diverse seeds. Yeah, it's getting it's getting a little too deep there for me, or too complex for me. Yeah. In this sense, I think the basic point is that the basic kinds have always gone on. The kinds we see today are the kinds that God created at the beginning.
That's what I'm kind of confused about mutations.
Yeah, well, mutations, yeah, there are.
Because there's mutations within even human beings, like the blue people in the Appalachia. That was a mutation.
Well,
and they interbred and they made more people.
Yeah, the blue people?
Yeah, the blue people in Appalachia, there was something with their blood. And they looked blue.
Okay.
And that was a mutation. So I was confused about
but not a mutation in the sense of mutating into a different species. They didn't become something non-human.
Okay.
I'd say that's within the realm of natural selection. Okay. There'd be mutation only in a very broad sense.
Yeah, that's the only way I know mutation. That's why I was kind of confused about
No, a mutation would be where it becomes actually another thing, a different kind of a thing.
Okay. And that's what the definition of a
mutation would be. Yeah. But
okay.
Anyway. Distinctness and integrity of the seeds, of which are there still those blue people? Are they still out there in Appalachia? Yes. Okay, John.
Eulogita Padre Stephen is innocent. Is innocent.
Hello. You have to turn your mic on. Can't hear you.
There we go. Hello, Father Stephen. It's innocent.
We still can't hear you.
Can't hear me.
Your audio's not working?
Not working.
Okay, do you want to... Okay, what's in the chat? What's in the chat? Chat. Where do I read the chat, George?
Should be on the side.
Here. Messages.
Okay. Oh, dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, what page are we on? Trend. Okay. And some more. Okay, let's go one at a time. I'm sorry. If Logite Pater Okidios, may be possible to answer this from our vantage point, but then dinosaurs are where the idea of dragons today come from. I heard many stories of modern saint where they came across dinosaurs in modern times. Is this what is called the Leviathan in the Psalm? Okay, there are several questions here. Are dinosaurs where dragons came from? As far as I know, what I'm given to understand is that it's possible that there were these great reptiles that survived the flood in isolated populations around the world, and that people actually encountered them. So, or the other theory is that when people encounter these dragons or great serpents, it's purely a demonic phenomenon. I don't think the church has a dogmatic stance on that. Michael, you want to say something?
Yeah, my wife ran
Can you turn your volume up?
I think it's on your end.
Oh,
I can
I'm
hear
up all the
you.
way.
I can
maybe
hear you,
not.
Mike.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I can hear you. Okay, there we go.
I'll make it quick, not a question, it's a comment on this. My wife found a book at a library called Dire Dragons, and he's a Protestant Christian, and he compares ancient art of dragons to dinosaur fossils. And basically, I think makes a pretty good case that a lot of this ancient art across cultures, not just in Christian culture, reflects some sort of like dinosaur. It's possible that like it matches loosely that some of these
Right.
dragons that we see in medieval art are certain dinosaur species that paleontologists have found.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question is, were these things encountered before or after the flood? And of course, obviously the vast majority were drowned in the flood, but some may have survived. Now, the one example I keep thinking about is the Loch Ness monster, and which has been cited, often for centuries. But the first account of the Loch Ness monster is in the life of Saint Columba. And in the life of Saint Columba, they're on the shore of Loch Ness, and this creature comes out and grabs one of the young monks, and the saint makes the sign of the cross, and the creature disappears or blows up. So the question is, was it a biological phenomenon, or was it purely demonic? And there are, in various lives of the saints, we have places where the pagans are worshiping some big serpent in a cave somewhere, and even sacrificing people to it, and the saint comes and destroys it by prayer. And was it some poor biological creature that was possessed or used by a demon, or was it a demon? That's I don't know. That's a great question, and it's fascinating. But I think there are too many examples throughout world cultures of people encountering extremely large, scary reptiles for to say these things don't exist, right? Father Justin, what page are we on? We are currently on page 184 and 185 of the third edition. John Britt, I've noticed a trend. I'm sorry, is there any more about dragons? Any more commentary or dragons? John Britt, I've noticed a trend with some fringe right-wing personalities who emphasize health and fitness where the sun is placed in a too lofty position. Seems to be almost a form of vitalism. Coming to hear the Father speak about the sun without putting too much emphasis on it, above and beyond being a part of the calendar. Yes, a source of light. So I guess this is part of kind of the neo-pagan variety of alt-right, far-right people. Get strong. I stumbled across one of these extreme race worshiping guys, and he was worshiping his own DNA. I worship my DNA. My DNA is getting passed on. So of course, I'm a radical right-wingy guy. I mean, I hope white people go on existing, and they tell me, well, white supremacy is a terrible thing. I always say, well, we've done a better job than anybody else. I don't know. We're not perfect. So I'm not some anti-white guy, but they take it to this extreme where they're worshiping, we don't worship our race, or we don't worship our bodies. We don't worship our DNA or our it's all corruptible. We're all corruptible creatures, right? And we're not God. We're not God. So the sun, so I didn't realize this. So John, what you're saying is that part of this, I didn't know about this. So part of this neo-pagan fringe right-wing stuff is that goes on with body worship is also they're also sun worship. They're kind of glorifying the sun. Well, that figures. I mean, it's a very predictable form of neo-paganism, right? Page we on? Audio issue. I hear you. This innocent. Hello, innocent. I can hear him. All right. Wait. Oh, wait. The blue people. Someone knows about the blue people.
Yes, Father, the blue people in Appalachia, I read about them. Apparently, they were just low on oxygen because they have a
Uh-huh.
genetic issue. I don't think it's evolution.
No, of course.
No, no, not evolution, but a mutation.
They were low in oxygen, but
Right.
But their blood had
they so
low
they
oxygen
interbred,
levels.
and so they yeah
Yeah, they interbred, so it just made more
got
of them.
passed on. Yeah, was yeah
I know it was something like that. I also read about
yeah.
that. That's how I'm,
It's natural selection. Well, this is how all the races developed, right? Because after the Tower of Babel, people got scattered over the face of the earth. Then, in response to environmental um, conditions,
change the pigment.
yeah, change of pigment, in response to environmental things, and also in response to their own intellectual and spiritual development, because the body is a psychosomatic part of the psychosomatic reality, right? That's all a mystery. It's a great mystery, really, how the races developed.
Father, I got a question about, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I've got a question about how to understand the three sons of Noah, because I
Hmm.
understand the three sons of Noah as being essentially Shem being the Semites,
Yes.
um, Japheth being Europeans and Asians essentially,
Yes.
and Ham being essentially Africans, right?
And the Egyptians.
And the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And there's of course
I believe that's the traditional understanding. Yes.
and there's a prophecy that Japheth is going to come into the tents of Shem,
Right.
right? And of course, there is the promise that Ham is going to be essentially a slave, right?
Yes. That's all
And I
there.
hear, and I hear people they think that's very politically incorrect, and
Well,
it's not.
the Holy Fathers, it's very politically incorrect, but the Holy Fathers in general, yes, uphold that. As recently as a recent writer, Bishop Nikolai Villamirovich, um, says that very politically incorrect thing. Uh, so we don't need to dwell on it, but it's there.
Okay, just making sure
Yeah.
I got that part
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yes. And we don't need to take the curse of Ham and then to justify the plantation system in the South prior to 1861 or something like that. I mean, um, that's a whole area of polemic among Protestants that we don't need Protestants of the time against each other that we don't need to get into. Um,
So it can be used as an ideological mechanism. It's more of just a
um,
prophecy of what would happen.
it's a prophecy, and if uh, it's a prophecy, and we don't need to. Uh, I don't think it should be the basis of an ideological, a political ideology, or um, but it's real.
Where do the Indians fit in that? Are they
I
Japheth?
think that they're Japhethites. I think because they're Asians.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, that's a whole interesting. We're gonna get to that later on. We're gonna get to the sons of Noah later on, and maybe Innocent, you can go do some research and find out more for us.
Oh
Since
no,
you
no,
asked the
I'll get in
question,
trouble. I'll get in
since
trouble, I'm afraid.
with whom? Us? I mean, we're safe. We're safe. I don't think there are any spies here. Let's see. No, no, no spies. No spies. Okay. So, all right. Um,
Oh, and the only other thing I can tie back to that is that I remember in the Lives of the Saints, I try to think, of course, of slaves that were black. And I remember there's the eunuch of Ethiopia.
mhm.
And I think he's the most prominent one of it. Of course, there's Saints Moses the Black and
Mm.
etc. I don't know. I mean, I'm not, but I remember about him that he was the servant of the Queen Candace. And I thought, is there
Well, he
some
was a
sort
high-ranking official.
I see. I
No,
see.
I mean, he had a chariot.
Hmm.
He was high-ranking official of the Ethiopian queen. Yeah.
Right.
Because there are all theories about Ethiopia. Matthew Raphael Johnson claims Ethiopians weren't Negroes.
I've heard of that. I heard that before. Yeah.
So, but I'm not saying we're to follow Matthew Raphael Johnson. I'm just bringing it up is, of course, he's an interesting guy. Um, and I don't
I've heard
dismiss
it.
his research, what he says, because he's a smart guy. But I don't have an opinion about that.
Yeah.
Don't
All
have an
right.
opinion.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Let's mark the page. We're on page 185. This is fascinating. And we don't need to go on right now. It's 9 o'clock, and I have some phone calls awaiting me. Hello, Susanna. Yeah. Does everybody know? I don't know if everybody knows each other. I think some of our Fort Wayne people don't know our former St. Hieronymus people. So the Hawk family, we're part of St. Hieronymus, and the Britt family. And where's Isaac and Ambrose? They're all St. Hieronymus alumni. So see, we're spreading the St. Hieronymus philosophy across North America. By,
We only know about half these people from these classes.
you already know them from the classes. Huh? Yeah. And so Fort Wayne folks, that includes Fort Wayne is, you want to put the camera on so we can see you?
My laptop actually doesn't have a camera on it.
Oh, you're so retro. There's Michael and Hannah Gallagher and Nicholas and Olga Goldie from Fort Wayne. They recently fled to us from Rocor MP. There's Father Justin Miller from Crawfordsville, Indiana, and Daria from Ypsilanti, and Tikhon now. Father Deacon Tikhon Axios, our friend Father Tikhon from St. Peter the Aleut in Avita Springs, Louisiana, the greatest state in the Union. Alabama's okay, but and Virginia, of course. Well, Virginia's in a class by itself, but I love Louisiana. But so Father Tikhon is the deacon now at St. Peter the Aleut. So we want to wish him many years in service. He was ordained by Bishop Benedict just last weekend, a weekend before last. And so congratulations, Father, many years in God's service. May the Holy Protomartyr Archdeacon Stephen, St. Lawrence the deacon, and your saint, St. Tikhon, intercede for you for many years in God's service. And Father Justin, who have you got there? You got somebody with you there?
This is Olga.
Olga.
Olga over my shoulder, and Basil's here with me listening
Hi,
in.
Olga and Basil.
Happy
And
to be.
have the Morehouses signed up for our class? Did they
I haven't
contact?
talked to them about it.
No. All right. So Father Deacon Justin also has a daughter, Nectaria, married to Reader George Morehouse, and they're part of our Holy Church down in Crawfordsville, Indiana, along with Josiah Norman,
Mm-hmm.
and they're out there missionizing, so we might get some more. Okay. So glory to God, and
Yeah.
let's we had some stimulating discussion tonight, and God willing, we'll be back next week.
Thank you, Father.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Let's say a prayer. It is truly me to bless you, the Theotokos, ever blessed, most immaculate, and Mother of our God, and all from the cherubim beyond compare, glorious and seraphim. For thy corruption gave us birth to God, the Word, the very Theotokos, to be magnified. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, in the ages of ages. Amen. Lord of mercy, Lord of mercy, Lord of mercy. God is with us, His grace, not for man, always now and ever, in the ages of ages. Amen. Good night, everybody.